In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.
This Sunday is one of those rare Sundays where all three of the readings in the lectionary have a connection with each other. And so the sermon will be a full-on exposition of all three readings. I hear grumbling and giggling. In the first reading from the Book of Wisdom, one of the books of the Apocrypha, which we ignore to our own loss, really serves as a prophecy of how Jesus was treated by the religious leaders and elders of his day. We read that, "Let us lie in wait for the righteous man, because he is inconvenient to us and opposes our actions. He reproaches us for sins against the law and accuses us of sins against our training. He professes to have knowledge of God and calls himself a child of the Lord." This is a perfect description, centuries before the fact, of Jesus' relationship with the Pharisees and the scribes, all of the religious leaders of Israel at the time. Why was he so opposed by them? Well, he says, "His manner of life is unlike that of others, and his ways are strange. We are considered by him as something base, and he avoids our ways as unclean. He calls the last and the righteous happy, and boasts that God is his Father." His manner of life is unlike ours, which is to say that so much of what Jesus taught and preached was in contradiction to what they taught and preached. And it was a threat to their authority. It was a threat to their power. It was a threat to their standing. Among the many things that Jesus preached and taught as authoritatively from God as opposed to their traditions was the many paradoxes that come out of the gospel, that come out of the life and teaching of Jesus. Things that are not intuitively right in our minds, and yet are true because Jesus teaches them to be so. We had one of those great paradoxes this past Sunday. Jesus made a prediction of his passion. As I mentioned, in Mark's Gospel, Jesus makes three of them, and he uses pretty much the same wording all three times. And all three times, he uses the disciples' misunderstanding in order to teach a lesson. And in each of those lessons is presented one of these paradoxes of the gospel and of the Christian faith. Last Sunday it was that if you would find your life, you will lose it. If you would pick up your life, you will lay it down. The implication being that if we focus and spend all of our time trying to find ourselves and trying to take up our life and find our life, then we'll never end up finding it. Now that's counterintuitive to the wisdom of the world. But then again, Jesus was not in the business of teaching the wisdom of the world. But the disciples didn't get that. Jesus predicted what his life was going to look like in the days to come. That he would be handed over. That he would be betrayed into the hands of sinners. That he would suffer, die, and on the third day rise again. He was not just sort of telling them the news of what was going to be happening to him. He was unfolding the pattern of his life as the Messiah, as the King of Israel, as the Son of God himself. And that these things that were going to happen to him weren't anomalies or signs of failure, but they were according to the plan, according to the scriptures of the Old Testament themselves. Well, in this morning's gospel, we have a very similar event happening. Jesus is teaching his disciples, and for a second time he makes this prediction of his passion. He says, "The Son of Man will be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And when he is killed, after three days, he will rise." But they did not understand the saying, and they were afraid to ask him. I like that little detail, that they were afraid to ask him. Well, because remember, last Sunday, Peter spoke up. And how did Jesus respond? to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them what they were talking about on the way. And it's always funny when Jesus asks that, because he's really not asking for lack of knowledge. He wants to see if they'll fess up. But they were silent. And they were silent because what they had been discussing on the way was which one of them was the greatest. Now keep that in mind. They weren't talking about who was the greatest pitcher, who was the greatest quarterback, who was the greatest cellist. They were talking about who was greatest amongst themselves. So really it was probably less of a discussion and more of an argument. Arguing. The 12 apprentices of Jesus. The 12 men in whom Jesus is entrusting the entire mission that he began. They are arguing amongst themselves about which one of them is the best of all. Which one of them is the greatest. And so Jesus, again, uses this prediction of his passion and their misunderstanding of it as a springboard to teach a lesson. A lesson which involves yet another paradox of gospel life. Another paradox of discipleship. He says, if anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all. And he took a child and put him in the midst of them. And taking him in his arms, he said to them, whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. Why involve a child in this? Is it just because Jesus loves the little children? I mean, it's a nice song. Well, yeah, Jesus does love the little children, but the reason he uses a child in this case is because they were arguing with each other about who would be the greatest. And what they meant was, who would be the greatest in this new kingdom that Jesus has come to inaugurate? First of all, they misunderstood how Jesus was going to establish his kingdom. Now they're misunderstanding what life is to be like within that kingdom that he has come to bring. They're expecting high position. They're expecting exaltation and glory. And when you are climbing the ladder in any line of endeavor or profession, you know who you have to spend the most time with. The people who have something to give back to you. The people who have the power or the influence or whatever to increase your stature, increase your standing. You don't have time to mess with the lowly, right? They don't have anything to contribute or give back. Jesus can see that this is exactly where his disciples are headed if this is their vision of the kingdom. Arguing about who is the greatest, then all of them will simply jockey for position of who is the greatest, and in the end, the ones who need the most will get lost. And so Jesus takes the most humble example that he can. He takes a child and puts them in the midst of them and says, whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. Even though this child can't give anything back. Even though this child cannot influence your path to the top. Even though this child cannot remunerate you or compensate you or reward you for your service, receive the child, because in doing so, you receive me. Jesus is not against ambition per se in the kingdom. Ambition and a desire for exaltation and glory is not in and of itself evil. It is our twisting of it which makes it evil. Jesus doesn't preach against any of that necessarily. He simply tells us not to go about the normal means of acquiring it. And thus he gives us these paradoxes. In order to find your life and take up your life, you must lose it and lay it down. In order to be great in the kingdom of God, you must be the lowest and the least. He doesn't just teach this, of course. He sets this as the pattern of his life. The life that he lived, the death that he died, and even in his glorified, resurrected life, he patterns and exemplifies the life that he intends for those who claim to be his followers. He said, if anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all. For the disciple of Jesus Christ, there is no task that is too menial. Perhaps the best illustration of this at all in the life of Jesus is when he washed the feet of the disciples at the Last Supper. Now, we look at that now as a beautiful symbolic gesture, but there's a lot more to it than that. You see, having somebody wash feet at a dinner was a normal, common occurrence back then. It's just what you did. You didn't really have covered shoes, and so your feet were dusty and hot, sweaty. And so you would have, as the host, someone come in to wash the feet. But it would not be you. It wouldn't be any of your family members. And it wouldn't be the highest of the servants in your household. It would be reserved for the lowest ranking member of the household servants. That person would be given the task of washing feet. Because feet in Middle Eastern culture are the epitome of lowliness and humility. To be underfoot, whether figuratively or literally, is the worst place you could possibly be in Mediterranean culture. And yet, Jesus, the Son of God himself, Jesus, through whom all things were made, Jesus, who was in the beginning with God and was God, Jesus, who deserves for all the world to fall at his feet, himself falls on his knees at the feet of his unworthy and ungrateful and ignorant disciples and washes their feet. Not simply to clean them, but to show them the way. To show them the way of humility. To show them the path of discipleship. This is the design that Jesus has for the lives of those who are his followers. That is the path of greatness. When you read the lives of the saints, when you look at a calendar and you look at the days of the week, and okay, on this day is Saint so-and-so and Saint so-and-so, you don't find people who elbow their way to sainthood. They served their way to sainthood. They humbled themselves to sainthood. Quite simply, they just clung to Jesus and to the pattern of life that he set for them. Now, of course, if our ambition is to be a saint on the calendar, well, then we're starting off on the wrong foot in the first place. But most of us aren't that way. And yet, the call to the greatest saints is the same call to the most ordinary Christian, like you or like me. We are called to establish in our own lives, in our families, in our church communities, and in any place we find ourselves, this pattern of servanthood, this pattern of making ourselves last of all, of not insisting upon our own way, or not insisting on being the top or being the first, but rather humbling ourselves as Jesus did, and recognizing that the pattern of our life will be the pattern, or the pattern of his life will be the pattern of ours as well. As Paul wrote in his letter to the Philippians, Jesus humbled himself, taking the form of a slave, and dying on the cross of obedience to God. Therefore, God highly exalted him and elevated him to the highest place. May we have ambition to be great, but great as Jesus is great. May we not elbow our way through the path of discipleship, but humble ourselves and serve our way through the kingdom of heaven. And if we commit ourselves to do so, and submit our hearts to the one who shows us how, then we will find true what St. James wrote to his readers in this morning's epistle. God opposes the proud, but gives grace, and I might even add abundant